Go ahead, Nancy.
Oh, okay, good. Welcome to this informational town hall on redistricting, presented by the League of Women Voters of Manistee County in partnership with the Manistee News Advocate. I'm Nancy Bering, president of the Manistee League. The League of Women Voters was formed 100 years ago as a result of the suffrage movement in order to educate voters about the voting process and about issues of concern. From its inception, the League has been nonpartisan, meaning it never supports or opposes any candidate or any political party. We do, however, take a stand on public policy issues we have studied and advocate for them. One of the issues we supported was the creation of an independent Citizens Redistricting Commission to draw fair district lines for our state legislature, and our congressional maps. And that's what this is about, to make sure that this process is as transparent as possible and that Michigan voters are informed and involved. We're fortunate in this community to have an excellent local newspaper, the Manistee News Advocate, and they are partnering with us to get this information to you. I'm happy to introduce to you now the newspaper's editor, Michelle Graves, and assistant editor, Ariel Breen.
Hi, I'm the news advocate editor, Michelle Graves. I wanted to welcome everyone taking part in our forum tonight. As your local newspaper, we work every day to bring news that is important to you, from city council and school board meetings to stories about your friends and neighbors. Another important aspect of our jobs is education. We aim to help educate the public on issues that are important and sometimes difficult to understand or are complex. That's why we're here tonight. We hope that you'll have a chance to learn something new about the process, which voters approved in 2018, and have some of your questions answered. I also wanted to introduce our assistant editor, Ariel Breen. She wants to give a wave.
Hi, nice to see you guys. I'll be taking your questions.
Back to Nancy.
Okay, we'll pause several times during our presentation this evening to answer your questions. If you are joining us via Zoom, please type your questions into the chat. If you're watching this live on the League's Facebook site or on the Manistee News Advocate's Facebook site, you may type your questions in the comment section of the video. We will do our best to get to as many questions as we can. Rhonda Lang, the redistricting commissioner who was scheduled to speak to us, is unable to do so tonight, but we are pleased that the communication and outreach director of the Independent Citizens Redistricting Commission, Edward Woods, is with us and will give us some insight into the work that the commission is doing. Following Mr. Woods' presentation, League members Jean Capper and Fran Wallace will tell us why this redistricting process and citizen participation in the process will strengthen our democracy. Welcome, Mr. Woods.
Please call me Edward, and thank you so much for having me. I've been to Manistee and it's beautiful, so I'm familiar with it. I hail from Southwest Michigan, live in the Lansing area, and happy to fill in for Commissioner Rhonda Lang. Can everyone hear me? Mm-hmm. Okay, great. This time I'm going to share my screen and hopefully this will work out perfectly. Are you able to see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, good. And I'm going to share it from the beginning and hopefully this will work. Can you see it?
Yes.
Perfect. Good, good, good. Just want to share with you a little bit about our strategic plan. I want to thank your president and Miriam as well as Sue Smith for coordinating this and bringing this together, and just share a little bit about the Michigan Independent Citizens Redistricting Commission, commonly called MICRC, and really appreciate the partnership with the League of Women Voters. As many of you know, in 2018, voters passed Proposal 2 to amend the Michigan Constitution. It created the Michigan Independent Citizens Redistricting Commission, MICRC, which is comprised of 13 randomly selected Michigan residents. So think of it like a lottery that included 4 Democrats, 5 independents, and 4 Republicans. Commissioner Lang, Rhonda Lang, is from Reed City, Michigan, just so you have an idea of who's pretty close to you. The MICRC is responsible for redistricting Michigan U.S. Congressional, State House, and State districts. As you know, the U.S. Congressional was 14 districts. We're now down to 13 as a result of the reapportionment data that came out yesterday. We lost a congressional seat. This is for the 5th time since 1970. We have lost a seat every 10 years. Although our population grew a little bit, it did not grow enough for us not to lose a seat. For the State House, we have 110 districts. And for the State Senate, we have 38 districts. So the MICRC is responsible for drawing the lines for each of those districts. I just wanted to share that with you. Our mission is to lead Michigan's redistricting process to assure Michigan's congressional, state senate, and state house district lines are drawn fairly in a citizen-led, transparent process, meeting the constitutional mandates of mainly federal law and any applicable laws. Our vision is to chart a positive course for elections based on fair maps for today and for the future. We want to start the process where we have fair maps, not just for the day, but for the future as well. Our goals are fairness, awareness, transparency, and engagement. Our goals focus on fairness, awareness, transparency, and engagement. And our core values focus on integrity, respect, transparency, and being purposeful. Those are our values. Our core competencies, our actions exemplify honesty and professionalism. Responsibilities and integrity are put above personal or political gain. We want thoughtful and purposeful dialogue and collegiality are fostered. Respect, tolerance, and equality are extended towards everyone. We'd want people to know that everyone sees that respect, tolerance, and equality are extended. Critical success factors. Michigan citizens like you from across the state and with diverse backgrounds participate meaningfully in the redistricting process. The Constitution is upheld and always at the forefront. All actions are undertaken with a commitment to fairness. The code of conduct, policies, and procedures are followed. Discussions and deliberations occur in open meetings with the utmost transparency. Commissioners, consultants, and staff members work in an impartial manner to instill public confidence in the integrity of the redistricting process. In conclusion, if you're interested to help us increase awareness and engagement or provide public comments about the process, you can email us at redistricting@michigan.gov, redistricting@michigan.gov, or mail them to the MICRC, P.O. Box 30318, Lansing, Michigan 48909. To learn more about the redistricting process, visit our website at www.michigan.gov/MICRC. And I want to thank you for this opportunity to share a little bit our mission and vision. I know you all have studied the process and are going to learn more about the criteria that the commission is doing. You'll learn more about the public hearing schedule and when those will take place. And so I'm just excited about this partnership and the opportunity to connect with the League of Women Voters in Manistee. if there's any questions, Nancy, I can take them at this time.
Okay, thank you, Edward. Are there any questions so far? It doesn't seem like it. Thank you so
I
much.
haven't received any questions.
Yeah.
All right, well, great. Thank you so much for having me. And we are coming out to Gaylord, Michigan on May 20th, if that's closer to you. And we'll be in Grand Rapids on July 1. And we'll be in Muskegon on June 29th. So I'm not sure which of those areas are the closest, but just to let you know, that's where we are. But we would also be interested, if you wanted to, is having a virtual town hall meeting or a in-person town hall meeting. If you'd like to have one in Manistee, would be happy to partner with you to do that. You have a tremendous amount of attendance. I just want to congratulate you for all the people that you have on here for tonight. That's exceptional.
Thank you, Edward. We really appreciate your work. Thanks a lot.
Right, thank you. Have a good evening. Bye-bye. Oh, how are the members of the board selected? The members of the board were selected in a random process that was conducted by the Secretary of State. If you go to our website and scroll to the bottom, or if you go to the meeting archive and scroll to the bottom, you will see the process that the Michigan Department of State used to select the commission. So that happened after we got started. So we can't really speak to all of that, but it's very transparent. They have the videos of the selection and everything like that. But I can honestly tell you the commission did not self-elect itself.
No, and we'll get to that in the presentation as well. So
Great.
that was good.
What is the criteria for drawing district lines? I know Nancy's going to talk about that, but there's 7 criteria and they're in ranked order. And everyone I've worked with at League of Michigan Voters has been expert at that. So I know Nancy's going to knock it out of the park. So that will be answered a little bit later.
We do have one other question. Could you explain a minute, you mentioned that Michigan lost a seat due to redistricting. Could you explain what that means and why that is a big deal?
It wasn't lost due to redistricting, it was lost due to population. The population growth, it has nothing to do with redistricting. It was lost to the population based on the census. The reapportionment data came out yesterday. There's a lot of news coverage on that. Texas gained 2 seats because their population increased. Michigan was one of 7 states that lost a seat because of the population migration to Texas, Florida, Montana, and North Carolina, which enabled them to get 1 additional seat, whereas Texas got 2 because of their population growth. So it had nothing to do with redistricting. It had to deal with the census. Just so we're clear on that and with regards to that. Is that clear? I don't want to mislead anyone or anything like that.
That's clear, very clear. Okay, thank you so much. We appreciate your time tonight.
Thank you.
Jean Kepper?
All right. I'm Jean Kepper, a member of the League, and I am going to share my screen here, and bear with me while I start my PowerPoint. And okay. All right, I'm not quite as smooth at this as Edward was, but we're getting there. I'm going to start from the beginning, play from the start. All right. So we're here.
We're not seeing your screen share yet. If you're trying to share, we can't see it yet.
Oh, Miriam. All right. Let me. I apologize. Let me get out of my PowerPoint here and see what. I need to get back in. So I'm getting back into Zoom here. Let's see if I can do this again. And I apologize for this glitch. I practiced, I promise. All right. Miriam, I am having trouble getting back into Zoom. So let's.
I'm going to go ahead and share it for you.
That would be better. Thank you for the help, Miriam.
Ready when you are.
All right, I appreciate it. All right, can we see my screen now?
Yes.
No,
right.
you're seeing my screen.
All right, we're seeing Miriam's screen. All right, thank you. And again, I apologize for this little glitch. I hope you will bear with me. What is redistricting? So following every census, which Edward just talked a little bit about, the distribution of congressional seats is subject to change, and it's all based on population. So if you have more people living in your state after the census, then you get more representatives. If you have fewer, then you lose seats. But that's all part of the census. Once we have the census complete, then we need to do the redistricting. It's up to each state to draw the lines that the congressional and state districts have, and every state determines its own process. How are map lines drawn? Well, federal law requires that we do this redistricting and that an equal number of persons is in each district, but there are no rules about how to draw the lines from the federal government, except for that Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act blocks district lines that deny minority voters an equal opportunity to participate in the political process. And also, the 14th Amendment assures equal protection. But other than that, it is up to each state to decide how to draw the lines. So we've got all of those are the federal requirements. However, if we leave it up to the states, what is the potential problem? Politicians have been known to manipulate elections to keep themselves and their party in power. And this is not a Republican problem or a Democratic problem. It's the party that's in charge at the time when those maps are drawn that tends to want to make the maps work for them and not for the rest of us. This is called gerrymandering. And this is drawing the lines to suit yourself, as opposed to thinking of the good of the whole state. It means we are drawing, the party who's in charge wants to draw those lines to make sure that they stay in power. So if we look at the first example, where we haven't drawn any districts at all, we're just looking at the population, 40% of the people in this particular population are purple and 60% are green. Now, if we draw districts lines that are compact and fair, you will see that each district in this particular example, the second one, has the same amount of people in it. And there are 2 purple districts, which represents 40%, which is what purple is of the whole, and 3 green districts, which is 60%, and green rules. But that's fair because it represents the distribution of purple and green in that particular district. Now, that isn't what normally happens. We get districts that are compact and unfair. So you can see what happens in the third example is that we dilute purple. So we give 2 purple and 3 green to each district, which means purple has no districts at all, and green gets 5. They rule, but it isn't fair because purple has no representation whatsoever. Then we get the most bizarre ones, and we're going to see an example of a Michigan one where gerrymandering went amok, where districts aren't compact or fair. So in this particular example, we've got lines that go all over the place. They don't have the same number of people in them. And it creates 3 purple districts and 2 green districts, which means purple rules, which in this case is not fair either. Because if we go back to our very first example in this district, we've got 40% purple and 60% green. And so if we get something that looks like the 4th one, then we're getting something, again, that is not fair. So we can have 2 different ways of gerrymandering. We can have cracking communities. So so if we go back here, this is the, whoops, sorry. Excuse me, there we go. If we go back here, we've got, if we crack, that's the 4th example. And if we pack partisans into one district so the other party wins, that's also totally unfair. So we've drawn the lines in this 2nd example so that green is going to rule, and because we've put all the purple in one area. So here's a picture of what we have now, which was, this map was drawn at the last time of census, which is 10 years ago. And as I intimated before, one of the worst gerrymandered districts in the entire country, something I'm sure we really don't want to be known for, is the 14th Congressional District. And you can see how contorted this district is in order to make sure that whoever was in charge back in 2010 was able to elect the people that they wanted, and not a fair representation. Because a fair representation would, a very good map would be much more like a rectangle or a square, as opposed to this incredibly convoluted map. So you can see that this is the, so we have to have 2 different maps, because we have to elect senators and representatives to the US Congress, and then we also have to have a map for representatives to our state house. And so you can see this is an example of what we have presently. And as Edward talked about, we have a chance in Michigan to stop gerrymandering, and it is incredibly important. We need to have citizen input so that the maps that are drawn that will be used for the next 10 years are fair and don't leave anybody out. And this was so important to Michigan's citizens that we actually passed a constitutional amendment back in 2018 to allow the voters, not the politicians, to draw the district lines. And it created that 13-member MICRC. And again, I think Edward went over some of this, but it's so important that the election maps that are going to be drawn to be used for the next election cycle, all the way for the next 10 years, need to be drawn in a way that is transparent, impartial, and fair. And all of the meetings that the MICRC are going to have will be open to the public. They're going to be recorded, and it is, the maps that are drawn are required not to favor or disfavor incumbents or any political party or a former politician. These maps are meant to be fair. The commission structure consists of 13 members, and the number 13 is very important because it's an odd number. And that means that there's no way that when they're voting on something, that there can be a tie. So if you have an even number of people, you could have 6 voting for, 6 voting against. In this particular, the way it was constructed, there are 4 Democrats, 5 independents, and 4 Republicans. So a total of 13 members. And so interesting, I know Edwards had said that there is a place where you can go and actually see a lot of information about how it happened. But just a little taste of that was that there were 10,000 random mailings and open applications sent out. So there were just a very broad selection, a possibility of people who could be on this commission. There was a selection of a total pool of 60 Republicans, 60 Democrats, and 80 independents, and half of those came from the random mailing applicants. Just like if you know in jury trials when there's they're trying to pick the jury, the prosecution and the defendant get to strike some of the jurors. In this case, the legislative leaders were also able to strike a total of, they each got 5 strikes for a total of 20 if they wanted to knock somebody out. Then out of that pool that was left, there was a random drawing. So you can see this process really was open, transparent, and it would be really hard to stack the deck and make it favor one party or the other. So at this point, we're going to stop again and have a chance to have questions and answers, hopefully.
Well, we have one question so far. You haven't quite covered the information yet, Jean, but the question is, will the MICRC be able to comply with the required dates for completing the redistricting work, even though they're hampered by the late 2020 census data? And will the current legislature need to approve any alternative completion dates? Not sure if you...
I will be totally honest, that is not a question that I would be able to answer, but I do think it is a really good question. I know that there was concerns that because the census data was quite delayed, that there might need to be some adjustments.
Okay. Do we have any other questions for Jean at this time?
I see so how were independents identified. It was self-identification.
I don't think we have any other questions at this time.
All right, so I am going to try again to share my own screen. And I think share. And go down. All right, did I succeed that time, guys? All right. So let's go back one slide here. So we talked about the commission. Now, the next thing that has to happen is there have to be maps drawn. So there is a whole procedure for how the maps will be drawn. And one thing that's really important to know is that there's going to be tests. There's an incredible program that will test maps to ensure that they comply with all the criteria that have been set. So their technology can be quite exciting, and they put all this data in, and the program can actually say whether it is a fair map. The final map that is to be adopted has to have a majority vote. And this is an interesting part. So the majority vote has to have at least 2 commissioners from each major political party, plus 2 commissioners who affiliate with neither party. So you have to have at least 2 Democrats, 2 Republicans, and 2 independents. And then whatever else needs in order to have a majority. But if, let's say, all of the independents and the Republicans voted for it, but no Democrats, then that map could not be passed. It's got to have it has to be supported across all the parties. And it will be tested, as I said, by a really incredibly cool program, which we've had a little bit of taste of, the League. So we talked about priorities. So there are a number of priorities, and these are listed in the order of their priority of being priorities. That has to have, the districts need to have equal population, and they have to comply with the federal law, including the Constitution and the Voting Rights Act. So you can't have a district that has 20,000 people and another district that has 100,000 people. That's not fair. They have to be geographically contiguous. If you think back to District 14, which is, as I said, one of the worst in the country for gerrymandering, that wasn't geographically contiguous. It was drawn very convoluted in order to meet a group of politicians' needs and wants, not the people. The districts have to reflect the state's diverse population and communities of interest. And Fran's going to go more into communities of interest. And they have to share cultural, historical characteristics or economic interests. So there has to be a reason that they're grouped together. No packing, no cracking. Remember what I showed you before? You can draw lines that pack a group together so that they don't get to have the representation because they're in only one district, and then they're surrounded by another group that gets 5 districts. No packing, no cracking, no trying to make sure to dilute the votes of any group of people. And again, this is something that's so incredibly powerful to me. In the past, with gerrymandering, we definitely get maps that favor incumbents, candidates, and parties. And as I said again, this is not a Republican or a Democratic issue, it's a politician issue. These maps also have to consider county, city, and township boundaries, which makes sense to me because those could be communities of interest. And as I said, Fran will talk a little bit more about that. And they need to be reasonably compact. Again, not that meandering over an incredibly big geographic area in order to make sure you get what you want. They need to be more rectangular than snake-like. This is where we come into play, and why it's so important for people to understand what we're doing. The public needs to participate. The commission has been set up. It has the requirements. It's going to be transparent, but they need our input. There will be hearings, and there will be 10 of those before the maps are drawn. And then we'll get a chance to weigh in after. There will be more meetings after the initial maps are drawn. We, the public, can also submit plans and underlying data, and there will be ways to do that. The commission has to publish their plans, And everything they do has to be transparent, in the open. They're going to be posting things on YouTube. There are going to be no meetings behind closed doors with people smoking cigars, which is my the way I think of political, what I think of as a closed meeting where they're all in a room together, and the public doesn't get to hear anything. That's not what's going to happen. And besides just the plan being published, there is going to be a plethora of information that shows how and why the decisions were made and how those map lines were drawn.
So I think it's my turn now.
It is, Fran. I was just going to say, this is turned over for questions after slide 23.
Before we start on the next slide, I can answer John's question about the impact of the delay on the redistricting data, if that's appropriate at this time.
Please do.
One of the things that is really wonderful about being able to see what's going on with the commission is there's just a ton of information on their website, which you can access by going to redistrictingmichigan.org, or you can go to mi.gov and go to /MICRC. And one of the things that's on their website is a court filing that the commission and the Secretary of State Jocelyn Benson filed earlier this month with the Supreme Court, and they requested expedited consideration and to ask for relief as soon as practicable, but not later than August 1st. And so it isn't up to the legislature to grant them relief, it's up to the Supreme Court. And what they're requesting is that they seek an order from the court directing the commission that what they'd like is to have the court direct the commission to propose plans within 72 days of receiving the census data and to approve plans within 45 days thereafter. If the census data is received as scheduled on September 30th, the proposed plans would be due no later than December 11th, and the plans would be approved on or before January 25th, 2022. And if I was more tech savvy, I could drop a link to this in the chat, but I'm not too good at that. But you can find this on the commission's website under legal filings, and the whole petition is there. And there's a lot of there are options for the commission if they don't get this relief, and there's options for but they probably will. But there's options for the commission to use what they call legacy data if they need to. There's nothing in the constitutional amendment that requires the use of the current census data, but obviously that's the thing they want to use. But there's quite a bit in this petition, and it's a very comprehensive answer to your question, John. So, but it's not, we don't have to rely on the legislature. So I'm one of a group of about 12 people who represent league members from all over the state, who we divide up the duties of listening to all the commission meetings. And there are other groups that are doing this too, I think. And I'm very impressed with how collegial these meetings are and how seriously these folks take their responsibility to keep our democracy functioning. They have to put a lot of time into this, and they're having to learn a lot, and they're willing to do that. They've hired staff. They are not themselves going to draw the maps. They're going to hire a mapping firm to do that, but it's a big job, and they're doing an excellent job of it, I think. We at the state level, the league is coordinating. I know Sue Smith meets with Edward Woods every week, and there's a real effort to help the commission fulfill its vision and mission. And where we're specifically focusing right now is on communities of interest, because as Jean explained, that's a concept that has been used for decades in redistricting, but nobody's really ever defined it. And and in different state laws, it has a little different, and it doesn't have a detailed definition in Michigan law. And the commission could make the definition more definite. I don't think they will, but they will. The definition in the statute, in the constitutional amendment, just says they may include but shall not be limited to populations that share cultural or historical characteristics or economic interests. And they can't include relationships with political parties, incumbents, or political candidates. So that's what they are. And why do they matter? Well, because that's how we will promote fair representative districts, by reflecting diverse communities. And it'll keep, the idea is to keep common interest groups intact so that they can elect representatives who will be responsive to their unique interests, and to encourage continuing interaction and civic engagement among community members in the communities in which they live. I'm working with a group in the Midland area. I don't know, you guys remember the flooding that happened because of the dam breaks up in that area in the Sanford, Midland. And as we got to talking about, well, how do we identify a community of interest? They realized that the watershed in which their communities are located, where a lot of these dams are, that it actually, it includes, I think, about 4 counties. And the communities that are affected by this right now are actually in 4 different state house districts. So they're interested in perhaps letting the commission know that they think it would be important that that they consider themselves a community of interest, and they would like to be grouped together so that they can express their concerns effectively to the legislature. So we talked about what they are, and that's kind of an example of at least one of them, but they need to be self-defined by the local community members. I can't define it for a community. They need to define it for themselves. And you have to define it in a geographic way. You have to be able to put it on a map or describe it in those terms. And you need common bonds that are linked to public policy issues or identities that might be affected by legislation, that are likely to result in a desire to share that same legislative district in order to secure more effective representation. Now up here, in the past, most of the districts have been drawn based on geographic boundaries. And like, for example, the House district that Manistee is in, it starts in Leelanau, and it goes down through Leelanau, Benzie, Manistee, and Ludington. And House districts have to, as we've heard, have to be reasonably, they have to be of equal population, so that to meet the 1 person, 1 vote standard. So House districts have to be about 90,000 people. So you can draw them. In the past, they've drawn them up here mostly on county lines, but it doesn't have to be that way. And communities of interest are under the new constitutional amendment, communities of interest trump geographic boundaries. So if a portion of Manistee County, if they're based on, I don't know, some school districts, for example, cross county lines, there might be agricultural groups that go across municipal boundaries. We have the tribes up here may want to be grouped in such a way that they have a better chance of actually having somebody from their community have a chance to win an election. So those are some of the things that we look at. So the MCIRC has to define this in some way, or at least understand it and use it in some way. So what they want to know from all of us is what name would you give your community? And there are tools out there that can help you do this. There's some software that was developed by some folks at Yale called representable.org. There's another very good program called Districtor, district with an R after it. And it allows you to put in characteristics about your community and then draw a line around it using either precincts or census blocks. Or you can just use words, but the idea is, what's the common bond that creates your community's shared identity? What's the geographic area covered by your community? What governmental policies are important for your community? How would keeping your community intact enhance the quality of your representation in Congress or the Michigan legislature? Are there nearby areas that strengthen or weaken your community of interest? For example, our House district it's kind of long and thin, but it runs all along Lake Michigan. If you think that's makes sense for what the interests of a community are with regard to, say, issues about a lakeshore, lake erosion, or issues related to tourism, you might want to let the commission know that we think this is a good way to group us. But maybe you for example, our health department, it's 10 different districts that are organized much differently than the current House district. Maybe there's a reason, for, say, public health reasons or something, that you might want to advocate for drawing a district to differently to include those people to have more of a say in their in governmental policies. So it really is key to, that's why they want public input, because this is a really different way to draw districts. It's not what people are used to. And in order to have it be effective, they really need to have public comment. And that's what the League is trying to help with. We're trying to help identify communities of interest, help them, if they want our help, learn about effective ways to testify. And attending the public hearings can be extremely important. And Edward talked about the public hearings, and the one that's closest to us is probably the Muskegon hearing, and that's going to be on the 29th of June. But if you are interested in doing more with looking at communities of interest, if you would contact Nancy or a league in your area, we would really like to work with you, because we have gotten some training on from leagues in other states that have participated in the communities of interest process, and have some good tools, I think, for helping people communicate effectively with the commission. So communities of, so with that, I think we can stop here and take some questions if you have any. And
so we do have some questions lined up. I don't know if they would be best for Jean or Fran, so I'll just ask the question, and whichever one of you best has the answer, I would say go ahead and take it if that works. So let me see here. So the first question we have is there any way that we can see how COVID affected the census numbers? Is it maybe from people not being able to move around? Do either of you have, any information on that?
Well, I think that probably there will be, now that the numbers are starting to come out, there probably will be people who challenge what's going on based on concerns about how the counts were done. So I think that will be one way that we can learn whether it had much of an impact. I think it probably didn't have as much of an impact about people moving around or not moving, because I don't know if you remember when you answered the census questionnaire, but they asked they asked you, like, because like when they do it in April, some people who live in Michigan may be in Florida at the time, and so they would ask you for your principal, where do you expect to be on April 1st, and that's kind of how they do it. And so it may have had some impact. Some of what went on with the prior administration may have had some impact, but as you heard from Edward, we've lost a congressional district every census for the last 50 years. And it's in part because it's not that we're not growing, it's that we're not growing as much as other places. We're growing relatively less than other places. The Michigan population grew by 2%. The Midwest as a whole, between the last census and this census, grew about 3%. Texas grew 10%. So it's the relative growth in population, and that I think clearly had more impact than almost anything else.
Okay. So our next question is, what is the pay for the commissioners, and who sets that pay, and can commissioners be removed?
I can do that if you want, or you can do it, Jean.
Go ahead.
Well, the constitutional amendment sets the salary of the commissioners to be a percentage of the Secretary of State's budget, and there's a range, and so the commissioners in very public setting had to decide how much they would be paid, and I think they ended up deciding that they would, I think it's about $42,000 a year that they're getting paid. And they set their own salary. And if they end up spending too much, they have a set budget, and they can use, they're going to have to use that budget to hire map makers, to hire Edward. They had to hire Edward. They had to hire an executive director. They had to hire a lawyer. So they kind of know how much money they have. And they had quite interesting discussions about how much they should be paid. And some commission members felt that amount that they ended up deciding on was too high. Other commissioners felt, no, I'm giving up my work to do this, and we need to be compensated so that we do this work with a full commitment. Commissioners can be removed, but only for very specific circumstances. They have to do something really egregious. As far as I know, it was just one, might have been two, but I think it was just one of the originally selected commissioners just decided after the first few meetings, and they kind of saw that all the work was going to be, they just said, I can't do this. So, and it happened to be an independent. So, there's a procedure in the constitutional amendment for going back into the hat and picking a name out of the hat for the new, to replace that commissioner with another independent commissioner. And so that's where they are right now. Is that responsive?
Yeah, I think that answers the question. Let me see. So the next question is, how does the public, I think that you had mentioned, Fran, or maybe it was both of you, that the public can watch the meetings, the hearings that will be held and have been held. How can the public do that if if you're not able to watch them in person? Are they are they online?
Yeah, everything, they're meeting virtually now. And they're able to continue to do that because they're based in Lansing, and the Ingham County Commissioners passed a resolution to allow public meetings to continue through the end of the year. They did that a long time ago. And so they'll be able to continue to meet virtually for a while. If the best thing to do is go to redistrictingmichigan.org, and you can sign up to get, they have all kinds of information about how to participate, but you can sign up to get notices of when the commission meets. They meet Tuesdays and Thursdays now, I think, and they alternate mornings and afternoons, and all of their meeting material is recorded. It's all there. All the materials that they look at, and it's really a fairly easy to navigate site.
And Joy was kind enough to post the address in the chat.
Oh, good.
Okay. The next question is how or what can the average person or voter do to support the redistricting process?
Well, one of the things is to become familiar with it, to visit that site. Another is to work with the league. We are definitely doing outreach about communities of interest, and that site I think is really important, and it sets, if you go and visit it, it sets forth how. So if you wanted to submit public comment, it will guide you through that process. If you want help on doing that, the league also is willing to help with that. So I think staying informed and trying to give public comment if it's appropriate is one of the ways. What else, Fran?
Well, in addition to having the public hearings and the maps, they do provide for public comment at the beginning of every meeting, and it's fairly important to monitor that, because they had an issue not too long ago when they were hiring a Voting Rights Act expert, because they know they're going to get lawsuits. They know they're going to have to be careful to comply with, those are the two first priority criteria, are to comply with federal law. And the person that they ended up hiring, they only actually passed one person through the process, and they got like 100 negative comments about this person that were clearly generated probably on a partisan basis. And this is where the commission, I thought, worked really well, because some of the members of the commission wanted to reconsider the vote to hire him. They did a reconsideration, and 5-4, they still decided to hang on to it. Why all 13 were there, I don't know. I hadn't watched that meeting, but so monitoring some of the meetings and making public comment about how you think the commission is functioning can also be important, because other people with interests, organized groups with interests are going to make comments. And so it's going to be important to not just hear from them. It's going to be important to just hear from citizens. And it's a new concept, but it's one that I think is important, and that we can get the hang of.
Okay, one question, I accidentally had skipped this before. I think somebody was kind of looking for a little bit of clarification on the members of the commission and the commission. So just to be clear, when you were talking about earlier, Jean, the 13 members, and that is the commission, correct? Can you maybe just kind of go over that again real quickly, how, you know, the 13 people and how they were selected?
So there was a random mailing out that went out to 100,000 people, soliciting people, and then there were applications. And from those solicitation and from the application, there was a pool that was developed, and it was, I believe, if I remember correctly, 30 Republicans, 30 Democrats, and 30 independents. And from that, the legislatures were allowed to strike anybody up to 5 people, just like in a jury. And then the names were well, I don't think they were literally put in a hat. I'm pretty sure that they had a little more sophisticated process for it. But the idea of it was all of those people were, then a random drawing was held to pick the final commission, which is 13 members. So it's, and that was how they were, so that it was really geared so that, again, the deck really couldn't be stacked in favor. Like, you couldn't sneak in as an independent, if you were really a Republican, or, they tried to really make it so that they were getting a cross selection and making it fair.
And there is on the website a section that's called Meet the Commissioners, and they're going to have a bio and a video. They don't have them on there for everybody yet. All they have is their application. But the commission chose a chairperson. His name is Steve Lett, and he's from Interlochen. And he's the chair of the commission right now. The vice chair for a while was Brittany Kellums. She's from Detroit. I think there's slightly more men than women on it. The partisan makeup, but it's very interesting to see how they're working, because I don't think they've ever met in person, and they're trying to build a way of working together just through Zoom, which is, a pretty big task.
Okay. Thank you for just reiterating that really quick. The next question is, will the MICRC be able to challenge the census data related to those incarcerated in prisons?
This has come up. This is something that's sometimes called prison gerrymandering. And I know that it's come up in our discussions of the monitoring team, the League of Women Voters team that's monitoring it, the 12 of us that are monitoring it. But I don't think that they're in a position to do that. I don't think that will come. I think they have to take the data as it comes. And I think it's either federal or Michigan law. I guess it's maybe Michigan law that incarcerated people are counted for purposes of the census, for purposes of where they are on the date that the census happened. And if they're incarcerated, they're counted. So for example, if someone's in the facility here in Manistee, they're counted as being here as opposed to being in their home community. I know there's at least one bill, I think it's still alive in the Michigan legislature, to try to address that prison gerrymandering issue, but I don't think that's on the commission's plate.
Okay. And the next question, also related to the census, do you have any information on how the county commissioner district lines will be set using the 2020 census data?
Again, that's not something that the commission will deal with. That's a different process, and I think it's set in state law, and I don't know a great deal about it. I read a little bit about it, but it's a totally different process from the commission, and I think it's maybe even done differently in different counties. We could probably put some more information about that maybe on our league website or on our league Facebook page. We could look into that, but I know it's different. It's not done through the Redistricting Commission, but it's an interesting question.
Okay, I think that's all the questions that we have. Unless we've got any others that have popped up.
There are two comments that did talk a little bit, posted some information about COVID's effect, possible effect.
Oh, cool.
So if you look in the chat there, it's a University of Michigan county by county study. So that would be really interesting to follow up on that.
Definitely, thank you.
All right, I want to thank our presenters, Edward Woods, Fran Wallace, and Jean Capper, for helping us to better understand this issue. To Michelle Graves and Ariel Green from the Manistee News Advocate for their partnership, and to all of you for joining us tonight for this town hall on redistricting. I'd especially like to give a shout out to our league member, Miriam Epskamp, our technical director, without whom this production would not have been possible. This town hall has been recorded and can be found on the League of Women Voters YouTube channel, our Facebook page, and also on the Manistee News Advocates Facebook page and their website. We hope you will encourage others to view it and to become better informed about this important process. Thank you.